You know what we like here at SoyaCincau's? Phones. And you know how we like them? Cheap. And we know you like them cheap too. So I'm Raymond and welcome to the Smartphones Under 1000 Ringgit list, April 2023 edition. Okay, so just to be clear, we're only gonna take phones that have launched in Malaysia since the start of the year into account because, let's face it, who wants to use an old phone? And we're gonna start off with the smartphone lineup that's perhaps the most synonymous with value at this price point, the Redmi Note 12. Launched only a couple of weeks ago, the Redmi Note 12 comes in two flavors, one with 5G and one without. Both of them come with 6.67-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED displays with a 120Hz refresh rate, a peak brightness of 1200 nits, with a layer of Corning Gorilla Glass 3 over them, and an IP53 dust and water resistance rating. The two phones also share a 5000 mAh battery with 33W fast charging, a 3.5mm audio jack, and an IR blaster as well. Where they differ though is primarily under the hood. The Redmi Note 12 5G has the relatively new Snapdragon 4 Gen 1 processor, the first of its kind in Malaysia, with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. It comes with Android 12 out of the box with MIUI 14 skinned over it, and you also get a 48MP main camera on the back with an 8MP ultra-wide, a 2MP macro, and in front is a 13MP selfie shooter. As for the Redmi Note 12 4G, it packs a Snapdragon 685 instead with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. Curiously, it comes with Android 13 out of the box instead with MIUI 14 skinned over it. On the back is a 50MP main camera, an 8MP ultra-wide, a 2MP macro, and a 13MP selfie camera up front. Now, I know the title of the video is Smartphones Under 1000, but we're gonna give the Redmi Note 12 5G a little leeway here. It's priced at 1099, just a tiny bit over. If you prefer the Redmi Note 12 4G, however, then you're comfortably under budget as it starts at 699. Our next smartphone under 1000 is... okay, so it's actually priced a little bit over as well. But wait, before you go, let me explain, okay? Normally priced at 1099 ringgit, the Poco X5 5G can be found for about 999 or less during sales. And there's good reason to consider it too. Just like the Redmi Notes that we were talking about earlier, the X5 has a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED display with similar specs of a 120Hz refresh rate and a peak brightness of 1200 nits. Under the hood though is a Snapdragon 695 with up to 8GB of RAM, 256GB of storage, and MIUI 13 out of the box. You'll also find a 48MP main camera, an 8MP ultra-wide, and a 2MP macro with a 13MP camera up front. Keeping the lights on is a 5000 mAh battery with 33W fast charging, and you'll find a 3.5mm headphone jack and an IR blaster too. If you like to move away from the Xiaomi-verse of phones, then there's the Samsung Galaxy A14 5G. Priced at 949 ringgit, the Galaxy A14 5G brings some notable improvements over its predecessor, such as a 6.6-inch Full HD Plus LCD display with a 90Hz refresh rate. However, you will be stuck with a MediaTek Dimensity 700, which is already a couple of years old by now, with 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. You do get Android 13 out of the box though, with 2 guaranteed major OS upgrades and 4 years of security updates. Arguably the best software support in this price segment. Rounding off the phone is a 50MP main camera, flanked by a pair of 2MP shooters for macro and depth, along with a 13MP front camera, a 5000 mAh battery, and 15W fast charging. Moving on to our next phone, the Realme 10 launched back in February with a 999 price tag. This gets you a smartphone with a 6.4-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED display with a 90Hz refresh rate. Under the hood, there is a MediaTek Helio G99 processor with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. While on the back, you'll find a 15 megapixel main camera with a secondary 2 megapixel black and white camera. In front, meanwhile, is a 16 megapixel selfie camera. Elsewhere, you'll find a 5000 mAh battery with 33 watt fast charging, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and Android 12 out of the box. It's also worth noting that this is a 4G only device. If you don't mind the lack of 5G support and you want to have an even higher megapixel count on your smartphone, you can take a look at the Honor X8A instead. For $999 as well, you're getting a 6.7-inch Full HD Plus LCD display with a 90Hz refresh rate and a Helio G88 processor with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage and Android 12 out of the box. This might not seem like much, but it's in the camera department where the Honor X8A shines, with a main 100 megapixel camera on the back, flanked by a 5 megapixel ultra wide and a 2 megapixel macro, with a 16 megapixel selfie camera up front. There's no 3.5mm headphone jack here, but you do get a 4500 mAh battery with 22.5 watt fast charging. Lastly, we've come to our newest smartphone on our list, the iQoo Z7X. It starts at $999 as well, with the smartphone packing a 6.64-inch Full HD Plus display and a 120Hz refresh rate. The display may not be as good as its AMOLED packing rivals, but where it shines, it's its large 6000 mAh battery and 80 watt fast charging. Powering the iQoo Z7X is a Snapdragon 695 with up to 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. You also get Android 13 out of the box with FunTouch OS 13 skinned over it, while on the back there's a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensor, and an 8 megapixel selfie camera up front. And that's been our list of the best smartphones you get at under 1000 ringgit. Let us know in the comments which phone you'll be looking at buying at this price point, and remember to like and subscribe for more from us here at SoyaCincau. This has been Raymond, signing out.